light within our hearts, light within our thoughts, light within our words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. With me today on the show, I have my friend Eric Breault, who's the owner and practitioner of Quantum Tones Healing. And thank you for that opening tone, by the way.
You're welcome.
The world in which we live seems so much more oriented toward competition, as if it were really possible for someone to win while somebody else loses. But everything is so interconnected that, professional biologists, I guess, will tell us that the more biodiversity decreases, the less likely it becomes for any other species to be able to survive. That in fact, biodiversity is somehow essential to anything being able to live here at all. And then we talk about consensus, and I've seen some people define it in terms of upon what can we all agree, and then they go for the lowest common denominator, but that's really not what, in my opinion, what consensus is supposed to be about. Consensus is about having concern for everybody within a group so that you find a solution that really does work for everyone. Mm-hmm. And in the midst of all that, we throw in this word compromise, which a lot of people want to describe as a necessity, but every time I have to use the word compromise, it seems that something is being given up that really shouldn't be given up, which is where I like personally to reach more for consensus and collaboration. The interesting thing about the three that we mentioned, collaboration, consensus, and compromise, mm-hmm. is that they all require effective communication.
They do, yeah.
You can't have any one of the three without effectively communicating.
Yeah.
And which is where it's so problematic at the present time that people are communicating with each other less and less, mm-hmm. and that our communication is becoming indirect. And I've lost count of the number of times I leave phone messages for people and nobody calls back.
And that's a challenge when it comes to cell phones, to people texting, to people via Facebook, email. And a lot of people nowadays think they feel that's the resources that they can go to, but it becomes a challenge because their lives are constantly bombarded with so much. Because we're a high-speed society. Fast-paced, fast, go there, and people just feel they have no time.
For themselves or for any of the things they love.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as if someone is spinning the gerbil wheel faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
To use that metaphor, and we're running to try to keep up with our own lives, and at some point it's going to take all of us together to simply say stop.
Yeah.
There is such a thing as too fast. It is the consensus that we have reached that point, mm-hmm. and we are now collectively going to create a better community in which we can live in a way that is much more sane.
Yeah, and where we can begin to help ourselves stay focused on, because when you're in that fast-paced existence, you're not focusing on anyone else around you, you're more focused on what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So you're not paying attention and not socially interacting as much. The lack of social interaction is not going to work in a compromise. It's not going to work in a consensus, or there'll be no collaboration.
When you don't know the people who are affected.
Yeah.
You know, when it's just a name in a headline or a face in a newspaper photograph. When I was 14, I elected for no apparent reason I can remember one summer to get on my bicycle and ride for 4 days to go visit people in other towns, which nobody had ever done that, but I didn't see anything about it that was impossible. The view of the road between my parents' home and my friend's home was very different from the back of a bicycle in comparison to looking out through the window of a car. I saw each individual house, each individual car, any dogs that came running out toward the road. I mean, it was all very, very individual. Mm-hmm. Every hill and every mile was something that I I crossed in a very direct fashion. I knew what it was that I was talking about. I recall seeing I believe it was a Disney movie, about an elderly man who had been a pilot, wanting to take his grandson for one last ride in this biplane that they were restoring in the garage, he and a friend of his. And his grandson, of course, is looking down at the landscape going, wow, this is incredible. And his grandfather says, yeah, the passenger jets fly too high. Mm-hmm. Because in a passenger jet, you don't see the country you're passing. It's so far away, you don't know the people, you don't know the towns, you don't know anything about it. It's just something down there, sometimes below the clouds, and you can't even see it. There's something about that immediacy, that knowing the face and the name and the person, that makes a difference. When we talk about companies laying off workers, and everyone kind of goes, oh yeah, that's really terrible. It's very, very different though when you say a company laid off 10,000 workers than when you say the company laid off George mm-hmm. and Mary and the lady who lives on the corner and the mailman's wife. Suddenly these are real people, and we can't make the same decisions so lightly. We can't treat it as just another newspaper headline. It becomes a real communal concern.
Yeah, it's
not something to breeze over.
No. And that's where the challenge comes in. Where sometimes, at times, it temporarily collapses a community. I could relate to that here when the town I live in here, Berwyn had a mill that was a running mill, a good, phenomenal running mill. And that,
a paper mill.
A paper mill. And when that mill collapsed and laid off workers, it collapsed the community.
It closed because of economic difficulties?
Economic difficulties, the financial hardships. So within the community, it becomes struggling. And sometimes these struggles brings the people together.
It can.
Sometimes.
I would prefer that it does.
Yeah.
In some cases, I've also seen it, though, where people have gotten so accustomed to the company providing everything that they forget how much of which they're still capable.
Yeah.
I don't know what could have actually happened, but my encouragement during such times would be, first of all, get to know the people next door, mm-hmm. inventory your resources, and figure out what you can still do, because we could get stuck in that moment of being laid off work and the community collapsing and wither away and die. Mm-hmm. Or we could look at it as an opportunity to create mm-hmm. an abundance of cottage industries.
Yep.
Or we could decide that, okay, the factory's sitting empty now, can we use this building over here for this other effort? The building's sitting empty anyway, why not put it to good use? I think it's human ingenuity that over and over again makes the constructive difference. But too often we forget just how inventive we could be.
We are very creative beings. We're here to create, manifest. The thing is, sometimes...
And by collaboration, we do more than any one of us could do alone.
Yeah, and it's like an expression of when you are alone, you're not willing to move ahead. But together as a community, you can move ahead. But when there are those who are negative and still don't believe that there is anything better, there is no light at the end of a tunnel. And those are the ones that actually slow the progress of the community.
It becomes the challenge of believing in your oppression more than you believe in your ability to reach a resolution.
Yeah.
It's not the oppressive enemy, the negative event, the misfortune that needs our help. Mm-hmm. It's the It's the recovery and the rebuilding and the reforming and the transforming and the discoveries.
Yeah.
Okay, that didn't work, let's try something totally new. And let's do it together. And if we do it together, we might just succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if people have more faith in their oppressors than they have in their own ability to bounce back, I don't see how anything good can come of that.
No, nothing good could come of that. And something like that may take years to change.
It will take as long as it takes for people to regain faith in themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we regain faith in ourselves,
Yeah.
miracles will happen.
Mm-hmm. That's about self-transformation will allow doors to open for newer opportunities that bring a betterment of the community as a whole, and others who see these people going out of their shells and awakening to the realization that there is better. There's a better way. And we can work together as a collaboration. As they come together with smaller groups and then collaborative effort, and eventually all the groups will come together as one. Mm-hmm. And other people will start following because people say, oh, there is a better way. Because look at this person. This person believes that we can create new shops in the community, that we can create inventions that are better for our environment, that will heal the earth, Mother Earth. And
or you could create a retirement community.
Yeah.
Because people who are retired essentially receive their monthly checks from somewhere outside of the community. Mm-hmm. So it essentially becomes a flow of resource into the community from an outside source. Mm-hmm. But in order to do that, the local community has to be supportive of the needs that that particular population would experience. Mm-hmm. It might mean changing our sidewalks so that they're all wheelchair accessible. Mm-hmm. Doing curb cuts. It might mean creating some sort of public transit system. It might mean creating a taxi service. Mm-hmm. Something that allows that group of people to find this a nice place to call home.
Yeah, where they're comfortable, where they're safe, mm-hmm. where they can still interact with the public and still have that connection, mm-hmm. that oneness connection between the community, being involved in the community, volunteering, having places open up volunteer spaces throughout the shops or whatever.
Well, and it might mean that instead of assembling something on a factory line, you're now being a support service person for someone who's retired or who has a particular disability.
Yeah.
The ability of human beings to learn and to acquire new skills in the spectrum of natural creation is, I think, pretty much unmatched. Mm-hmm. I mean, the smartest I can think of, one television show I saw referred to them as the engineers of the animal world, were the squirrels. The squirrels are amazing for what they can decipher about how to get from one place to another, going up and down cords and poles and all sorts of things. We're millions of years ahead of them. Mm-hmm. Human ingenuity and inventiveness is incredible, and adaptability. You may have done the same thing for the last 20 years. That doesn't mean you can't learn something new now.
Mm-hmm. Without that creativity, that inventiveness, without that, there would be nothing here like this.
Granted, it feels really painful, uncomfortable, unpleasant, even tragic at the time.
Yeah.
There is something about disasters, be they economic or environmental, that forces us to embrace renewal. And we can do it willingly and eagerly and shorten the time of struggle, mm-hmm. or we can drag our feet and lament how much better things were before, mm-hmm. and refuse to move forward. But eventually, because you can't bring the past forward, it was the past, that's why we call it the past, because we can't bring it forward, mm-hmm. there really isn't anywhere to go except forward.
No.
And the longer we hold on to what's behind, the less we allow ourselves to move forward. We anchor ourselves in the past instead of embracing the new life that is begging for us to show up and start creating.
Yeah, and then getting rid of that anger and that overwhelmingness that I just lost my job, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, and just stay in that space of feeling sorry for themselves, but instead you just, okay, this was my old job.
Let's do an appropriate ritual of mourning and let it go.
Yeah, and I said, this is an opportunity. Okay, this is an opportunity for me to create something new, create a better aspect of myself. This is the universe telling me that it is opening a doorway to a higher way of understanding and also bringing more creativity into my life that this job probably didn't give me. Now I'm taking another step. Now this other job is going to give me things that will be able to allow me to express my creativity in a more higher dimensional perspective and awareness.
Well, at the very least, doing things that you never thought you could do.
Yeah.
You know, and to the extent that we're willing to embrace the process of becoming, the most amazing things can happen.
Mm-hmm.
To the extent that we want to stay where we were with everything exactly the way it was and nothing changing, well, if you want me to deliver a coffin, you can close the lid over yourself if you like, but I really don't think that's the point of life. You know, within life, it's a continual becoming.
Yeah.
You know, and if we do that with collaboration and consensus, you know, coming back to our 3 words, the consensus, the ways that we do all this becoming is not in a narcissistic, selfish sense of I'm the only one who matters and my dreams matter more than anybody else's, but it's the consensus of taking our dreams and weaving them with everybody else's dreams and creating a collective communal basket of sorts that can hold even more than any one of the dreams could hold all by itself.
Mm.
You know, essentially we give ourselves a bigger world to live in by recognizing and embracing the fact, the inescapable fact, that the world is a shared space.
It's quite a big shared space.
Mm-hmm.
And people have to realize there's an abundance out there that on Mother Earth, an offering, an abundance of things where the resources are all there. We just have to realize that they're there and tap into that and energy and working with the creative energy from within
mm-hmm.
and working with Mother Earth.
And working with each other.
Yeah, and working with each other.
It's never enough to say, well, I have enough. It's this wonderful word that I discovered on the internet that I guess comes from Africa, Ubuntu,
yeah.
which, if I remember correctly, was essentially translated, I am because we are. Because it was discovered by some people who wanted to introduce a competitive sort of interaction with among some African children, and they said, okay, here's the prize down here, whoever gets to it first gets all the good stuff. And the children all joined hands and ran together, and then they sat in a circle and shared everything that was in the center, and each of them would say, Ubuntu, I am because we are. Mm-hmm. They recognized their individuality, but they also recognized their interconnectedness, and that in order for them to be happy, everybody needed to be happy. That it wasn't about being happy when when others weren't happy. It was about recognizing it's not who's more important. It's recognizing that everyone is important, that everyone matters, that every life matters, and living like you believe it. I mean, to me, that's what is involved in the simple word consensus. It's not just, can we stop arguing and can we agree? It's, can we create a world in which everything really works for every person?
Mm-hmm. Because everyone has something to offer intellectually and spiritually within that.
Well, even logistically.
Yeah.
I was talking with a friend of mine who has been blind since birth, And she said in certain cultures, when a child was born blind, they would become the record keepers for the tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Because the one thing they could still do is remember all the stories. I mean, they were like a walking encyclopedia. That was their job. Mm-hmm. They couldn't see, so they wouldn't be out in the field, they wouldn't be hunting, but they could be the archivist, the walking library for the tribe. You know, someone to tell them where they had been and what they'd been through and what they survived and how they survived it.
It's important to allow that blind one person to follow the purpose, and offered something to the community that others didn't offer. So that realization that each and every person has something to offer, and to the point that will give us a very lavish and almost like a Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, it's kind of a big potluck of all the diversity of humanity.
Yeah.
You know, in our age of medical miracles and all this, I was kind of very impressed and challenged, I guess, by this brief little video I saw on the internet of two boys who were, I guess, what is now called co-joined twins.
Wow.
We used to call them Siamese twins because the original most well-known couple is from Siam, but
wow.
They're two boys that are joined at the waist, I think. Between the two of them, there's two heads, two torsos, 4 arms, and 4 legs. But in the middle, around the hips, they're joined together so when they move down the walk, it's almost like watching a spider walk or something on their hands and feet.
Oh, wow.
As they're kind of sidling down the sidewalk. And I thought, that's very fascinating. But they asked the father, who was a rather poor worker, I believe this is in Pakistan or India or someplace like that, but so I'm not sure exactly which religion he is, but or practices. Might be Hinduism, might be Buddhism, I'm not sure. Might be something else. But the question came up, what about having them surgically separated? And the two boys were in no hurry to be separated. They had adapted to life as a co-joined person, or co-joined two persons, I guess, a single entity of two persons. He responded that he didn't see any reason for meddling because he figured that the divine had created them in the form that he wanted them to be. And I thought, wow, that's impressive faith. When you can look up at whatever your conception of God is and say, God made him the way he wanted him to be. It's up to us to learn from that. I found that so impressive, that he was willing to trust and accept rather than rail against or be angry about or lecture God on expectations or anything like that.
Embracing that uniqueness that they are together as one.
Well, and curiously, in order for these two to function as a co-joined set of twins, they had to embrace collaboration, consensus, and compromise in order to function at all. Those three had been part of their life lessons since the moment they were born.
Yeah, and it allows them, made them who they are as two individuals.
And in that, they become so horrendously challenging to the rest of us as we argue over petty things.
They have their challenges, and my impression, I assumed, when there are people like that blind or having some things that are different than others, like Down syndrome or all those people that are challenged with limitations. But with those limitations, there are gifts and creativities that they can express more than any of us can understand.
It's really not a question of being less than.
No. And by us seeing them, when there are people that see them no good or lesser, or that just degrades who they are as people.
Yeah.
And they are just as much people as we are. They are, for example, Down syndromes are here to teach us about unconditional love, and loving who we are as people, and showing the beauty of the innocence that we are.
Major lessons of unconditional love.
Right, yeah.
Well, and the interesting thing, just to add a final note as we're running out of time here, I don't think they would see anything they're doing as compromise. Which is where I say when I have to use the word compromise, I feel like I'm giving something up, but I don't know that when you're giving willingly that it ever feels like compromise.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are compromised, if you feel like you're compromising, I would suggest going back to the discussion table and working toward better integration. Because to the extent that your integration is exceptional, I don't think you'll mind compromise, if you even call it that. But if you haven't done the integration and somebody else tells you to compromise for them, there's some part of you that's very valuable that should not be left behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's important because there are those who are not willing to express who they are around people, or even to share in a circle because there's something socially they're socially challenged. And all of us as humanity have some social challenges that we're still learning.
Well, and I'm sure there are a lot of people judging those co-joined twins, saying, no, you need to be separated, you need to become more normal. And
yeah,
I guess to end with a movie quote from the movie Practical Magic, the one aunt instructs her niece, when are you going to learn that normalcy is not a virtue? If anything, it denotes it suggests a lack of courage.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not about being normal, it's about being ourselves.
It is, yeah.
And with collaboration, consensus, and compromise, it can be a win-win situation.